day-to-day management of research and technology programs driving the department's innovation agenda while upholding operational excellence. Lee's career in transportation started as a peak season driver for UPS during college. After graduating in 1984, he became a UPS driver. He then progressed through multiple leadership positions within UPS, TuSimple, and Lee M. White Consulting. Mr. White earned his bachelor's degree in economics at the University of Georgia. Beyond his professional accolades, Lee is recognized as a thought leader in the AV industry, frequently sharing his insights in media interviews at future conferences. So, Mr. White, welcome.
Well, good morning, Midwest Commercial Vehicle Safety Summit. As Eric said, my name is Lee White, and I'm Deputy Assistant Secretary. And I just want to thank you for welcoming me to Kansas City. The last time I was here, my son got engaged on the plaza. It was a cold January evening, and I had to drive through an ice storm to get here. So thank you for taking care of the roads and getting me here. But was greeted by some of the warmest people here, and that continues here as we've made our visit. It's an honor to stand before you, this distinguished group of transportation change makers, all united by a single purpose: reducing the number and severity of commercial motor vehicle crashes in our communities. I was trained 42 years ago on the Smith system, and I still use those truck driving skills today when I drive my vehicle. We've gathered here in Kansas City, a place that's not just a city, but a critical heartbeat of America's supply chain. This region moves the goods and services millions depend on every day in Kansas, Missouri, and beyond. It's a hub, a connector, and a gateway. And that means it's also a point of concentrated responsibility. When it comes to safety, what we do reverberates across the nation. I had the opportunity to visit a traffic center last night. The MARC Group has implemented new technology that is integrating the signal operations. And that is so exciting for this community to see safety in action at our intersections, and will enhance the fan experience for the World Cup. We're excited that the US DOT SMART Grant program gets to participate in what's happening right here locally in Kansas City. Using the data from the SMART DOT grant for traffic signal retiming will improve the flow of traffic in Kansas City. And with those World Cup games on the way, and the many different gathering opportunities for fans, the fans coming to this area will have an improved traffic experience. Under President Trump and Secretary Sean Duffy, US DOT has a clear mission: advance safe deployment of proven technologies, leverage American ingenuity to protect lives and strengthen our infrastructure, and make smart, high-impact investments that yield results, not just headlines. That mission is strengthened by our commitment to research, driving discoveries from labs and universities, and bringing new transportation technologies into the hands of stakeholders across the country and in this room. In April, Secretary Duffy launched the department's innovation agenda. The Secretary made it clear that the United States must maintain its global leadership in the development and the deployment of automated vehicles. We're also streamlining processes, cutting red tape, and accelerating innovation that can be measured in lives saved, crashes prevented, and communities served. This isn't about potential, it's about implementation. We're moving from concepts in labs to results on roads, along I-70, I-35, and every freight corridor in the Midwest. This summit exists because the stakes are sky high. The Midwest is a vast, interconnected web of movement. The use of Kansas City as a central node means that the commercial motor vehicles were not only delivering goods here, they're passing through on some of the most heavily traveled interstate corridors in the country. Every day, drivers navigate congested interchanges, weather extremes, rural highways, and urban bottlenecks. And while logistics hubs are points of economic strength, they're also points of risk. A single chain reaction crash can shut down supply lines and change lives. A moment of driver fatigue can derail a delivery schedule and destroy lives. A gap in enforcement coverage can mean unsafe vehicles continuing to operate in our system. We owe it to the communities who live here, who work here, and drive here to set the gold standard for commercial vehicle safety. Secretary Duffy has made it clear. Innovation is not optional, it's essential. And that means not just supporting operational safety, but also the development of a robust national automated vehicle infrastructure, one that enables safe testing, rapid integration, and access to life-saving innovations across all states, rural and urban. But in commercial vehicle safety, innovation must be laser focused on outcomes. So what does this vision look like on the ground? It means making data-driven decisions by leveraging roadway crash data, enforcement records, and fleet telematics to identify and address high-risk corridors, not after the fact, but before the accidents even happen. It means moving beyond pilots, deploying automated safety systems like collision avoidance, lane keeping, and fatigue detection technologies at scale to protect drivers and communities. It means harnessing the power of vehicle-to-everything communications, V2X, where trucks, roadside infrastructure, and enforcement units instantly share safety warnings in seconds, not minutes or hours. It also means paying attention to local signals, literally and figuratively, investing in smarter traffic signal systems across Midwest freight corridors to improve flow, reduce stop-and-go patterns that wear down the drivers, and help cities like Kansas City and communities across the Midwest adapt their traffic control infrastructure for the connected vehicle era. But technology alone isn't enough. We must prioritize human-centered design, creating safety tools that empower operators without overwhelming them, making adoption easier and confidence stronger. And perhaps most importantly, it requires a collaborative approach. Industry, enforcement, and researchers, all working together from a shared playbook to reduce fragmentation and ensure consistent, effective, proper deployment across the board. We've already seen these approaches save lives in places like Georgia's connected corridors, Minnesota's automated shuttles, and autonomous freight convoys traveling throughout Texas. The lesson is simple. If it works in the real world, it needs to work everywhere. I still remember my first ride in an autonomous truck 7 years ago. It operated for nearly 90 minutes without a single driver intervention. The precision of the perception system was a game changer for me, being able to see out 10 football fields ahead. And for me and my background, I was comparing it to the safest drivers I'd ever been with. And I remember getting off the truck, standing down and looking up at that truck. And I said, I will never be able to look at truck in the same way. But technology on its own isn't the full solution. The professionals in this room, from law enforcement who stop unsafe trucks, to the engineers who design safety critical systems, to the insurance who incentivize risk reduction, all are part of the connective tissue of the safety ecosystem. Every truck on the road represents a mix of human skill, machine assistance, and systematic oversight. Our mission is to make sure all three work in harmony. When this first conference was held in 2022, it was groundbreaking for the Midwest. But in just the two and a half years, conditions have evolved. Supply chains are under more pressure. Freight demand is bringing more pressure to the entire ecosystem. Driver availability is still an option and still a concern. Technology adoption is accelerating, but unevenly. This summit is our chance to close some of those gaps. Information shared here must translate into action plans after you leave Kansas City. Federal agencies should walk away with clear priorities for enforcement partnerships. Industry should walk away with reassessment of fleet safety investments. Researchers can find pathways to real-world testing and deployment. Insurance and nonprofits renew commitment to risk awareness at every level. At the US DOT, safety is not just a priority because priorities can change. It is our foundation. That foundation supports an innovation agenda where every new technology is judged by its ability to protect lives. We stand at a crossroad. One path leads to the continued preventable crashes, to more driver fatigue, more congestion, and rising public frustration. The other path is harder, but hopeful. A future where collaboration between all of us ends needless tragedies. The choice is clear, but it takes all of us. Federal, state, industry, and research partnerships. No one sector can do it by itself. When Eisenhower launched the Highway Initiative back in the 1950s, it was about military mobility. It was about moving troops and tanks from coast to coast. As a person with 42 years in the industry, I think the next 5 years will see more disruption in our transportation system than we've seen in those 42 years. But I believe the next 5 years, the priority will be the trade and safety mobility. That is where I think we're going to see the disruption over the next 5 years. But we've got a choice. And we need to lead with safety, build it with trust, and then turn connected and automated commercial vehicle safety technology into an everyday reality. The next generation of Midwest drivers and every community dependent on the goods they deliver is watching us, the people in this room. I loved how Administrator Barrs reflected on the diverse background of the people in this room, because that's what it's going to take for us to move forward. I believe the people in this room can drive that agenda. Let's show them what leadership looks like. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being part of this noble calling to move this region and this nation forward in safety. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. That was great. Our next speaker is Jenny Carino. She is the FMCSA Division Chief in the Office of Research, Crash, Data Analytics Division. She's project manager for a large truck crash causal factor study, the FMCSA Geospatial Information Officer, and manages the annual large truck and bus crash facts in Pocket County, which is an excellent resource. Used a lot. She's a graduate of the University of Idaho with a BS in Mathematics and Psychology and Master of Science in Statistical Science. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let's see if I can get this to work. right, I'm excited to be here today to give an update to everybody on where we are with our Crash Causal Factors program. Quick show of hands, is there anybody in the room who has not heard of the Crash Causal Factors program? Okay, 2 people, 3 people? Okay, great. Well, I'm looking forward to giving you an update of this. If you haven't heard of the Crash Causal Factors program, you may have heard of the large truck crash causation study, which was done, as this slide shows, more than 20 years ago. That was our first major study of crashes, looking into what the causal factors are so we can get better countermeasures. Everyone in this room has probably known that in the last 20 years, much has changed. This slide here shows we've had an increase in regulated carriers, about 20%. We've had an increase in the number of registered large trucks, around 81%. And as the graphic shows here, we've had an increase in fatal crashes since 2009. In addition to that, there have been significant changes affecting the transportation industry, vehicle and transportation technology, information technology. For example, over 20 years ago, you would have been hard-pressed to find a cell phone, let alone a smartphone, inside vehicles, and now people have multiple ones. They have iPads, they have information systems. Demographics have changed, how we commute changed, how we ship has changed, and really it shows that we need more robust, more up-to-date data to really understand what the existing risk factors are and how we can drive better countermeasures. So as the administrator said in his talk this morning, really this study is going to allow us to get that data so we can intervene more effectively to save lives, identify what the new key targets risk areas are so we can reverse that trend and prevent crashes from occurring. So I'm going to talk about our heavy-duty truck study, which is what is our first phase of the Crash Causal Factors program. This slide here gives an overview of the scope of that study. We are looking at collecting data on 2008 crashes involving the heavy-duty trucks. That's going to be our Class 7, Class 8 heavy-duty vehicles with a GVWR of greater than 26,000 pounds. We will, as this slide says, have a convenient sample of serious injury crashes where feasible. I'll go into this on the next slide a little bit more, but one of the key areas that we're working on in the study is leveraging existing resources, leveraging existing processes. So where states and our partners are collecting similar data on serious injury crashes, we will be collecting that so we can get some insight into those crashes, but the focus will be on fatal crashes. We have 2 years of data collection anticipated with the start dates of next year in 30 states. This here is a map of 30 states that are participating. That will be in the light blue. We have 2 dark blue states you see here, Georgia and West Virginia. Those are alternate sample states. So those are states that we are meeting with regularly, bring along the way in case one of our blue states is not able to participate last minute so we can still get a national representative sample design. We do want to have that national representative sample so we can get national estimates, identify what some of the key causal factor areas are, and leverage that and use that to drive effective countermeasures, whether it's via policy, regulation, or otherwise. And I do want to make a note too, you do see some white states up here. Those are not sample states in the way that they will be part of national representative sample. However, we still encourage the states to share data if they want, with the caveat that it would be the existing on-scene data that I'll go into the other slide, so that we can get more data. We've had some states say that they would like to participate, so we're working with them to make sure that they can still submit data to us. This slide here goes into how we are collecting data. There are 2 sides to our data collection. I'll start with the existing resources. This has been a really big effort of our team over the last few years to identify what is being collected currently at the state and local level. If you're familiar with FARS or Midwest crash data, that is not a census of what is collected within the states. So we really wanted to better understand what is collected by initial crash responders in police crash reports, what is being collected in more robust post-crash investigations or full crash reconstructions at the state level, and then mapping that together to identify what is being collected standardly across the nation. We worked very closely with our internal partners such as NHTSA on this to leverage existing standards such as MUC, the Model Minimum Uniform Crash Criteria, where we could, and then from there use best practices in the states to determine new standards. So from there, it's a very, very big effort. If you think about every state has a different police crash report. Even within that state, there could be multiple cities or county groups that collect data differently. So we have finished that effort and created what we call our CCIP post-crash reports. And that we will be working with the states to streamline, ingest data electronically where we can, and identify where the gap areas are. We're also partnering with our mixed app teams on post-crash inspections, and we will have state CMB data analysts, which in each state, which will be working with all the different agencies involved to make sure that we get quality data. Some states will have one agency that we're working with, some have up to 4, so we just want to make sure that we have that collaboration and that discussion from the beginning. And then on the other side is a new data component where we have CCIP confidential interviews. We'll be interviewing drivers, carriers, witnesses on a number of different topics. I'll go into a little bit more. But really, as the slide says here, our goal is to collect accurate, comprehensive data in a streamlined, efficient way. Building off the data that's being collected, identifying gaps that are needed to answer specific research questions at the end of the day, so that we have that up-to-date data that can really tell us what those trends are, what those key risk areas are in terms of causal factors, so we can develop very effective data-driven countermeasures. So this slide here just summarizes what the state collected data. Like I said, we're looking at police crash reports, the post-crash inspection data, post-crash investigation data, and reconstruction data analysis, and then other critical state records. And then the other component, as I mentioned, is our driver carrier interviews. So we partnered with the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, or BTS, who is if you have not heard of them, they are the statistical agency within the Department of Transportation, to conduct interviews protected under the Confidential Information Protection and Statistical Efficiency Act, or CIPSE. CIPSE is a gold standard of data protections. It is one that we can go to the carriers and drivers and get real responses, no worry about release of data through subpoena is not deployable, and proprietary information cannot be shared. So at the end of the day, we cannot share information that one specific carrier said, one driver said will be more aggregated. Interviews that we're planning to do there, we're planning to interview, as I mentioned, the CMB drivers, co-drivers, non-CMB drivers, witnesses, motor carrier managers, dispatchers. And example interview topics are on the screen here too as well, looking into how motor carrier companies are scheduling the driver, what the vehicle inspection and maintenance history is, how are they hiring the drivers, how are they ensuring that they have the training and exposure needed to operate safely, how are they compensating and benefiting for the drivers, and if there's any drug stop driving coming on, as well as truck stop rest. So as I mentioned, it's very strict protections for this. So some key takeaways on what CIPSE data is and how it can be used is it cannot be obtained by government agencies for non-statistical purposes. So the use of CIPSE will be statistical use only. It's immune from legal processes, so it's not subject to those court subpoenas, cannot be submitted to evidence. You cannot go out and say, this carrier said this specifically. There are some strict fines associated with that. And as I mentioned, it's exempt from the Freedom of Information Act or FOIA request. So as I said, we're working very closely with the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. We will have a member on our team who is authorized as a CIPSE agent. It's very specific training you have to go through in order to look at the data and analyze it and work on those aggregate trends. But really, at the end of the day, for those interview protections, they are confidential, they are secure. As this slide says, there are certain penalties. If you violate any of the CIPSE laws, there is jail time, there is a very steep fine. So we take this very seriously, and we will be doing a very large marketing campaign early next year to make sure that the motor carrier companies' drivers understand what these interviews are, what protections come with it, so that we can get a robust and good data from that. So what happens next? Where are we? Right now, this slide here talks about our pilot states for testing data collection. I want to give a shout out to any of these states that are in this room today. We have Kansas, Alabama, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Mississippi, New York, North Carolina, and Washington State. We are meeting with these states very frequently 1 to 2 times a month to talk about how to deploy the heavy duty truck study, getting input in how to develop the IT solution, the data collection forms, and really it's been a real good group effort for us to hear best practices, see potential risk areas before we get them in order to ensure that the study rolls out in a very seamless way. This is a very high-level timeline of where we are and where we're going with the heavy-duty truck study. Back in 2023-24, we did an information collection request where we spoke to every single state to get information on what their existing standard operating procedures were, what data that they are collecting roadside today, so that we could do that mapping effort that I talked about before. We have a robust study design in place. We have our national representative sample of this states that I showed earlier. And then right now, from 2024 to 2026, we're deep into our final preparations for data collection. We're working with all of our in-scope states on those data sharing agreements. We're developing a CCFP database to collect that data. We'll have one at FMCSA for the roadside data, and then BTS will have a database for the confidential protection reviews. And then we are going to do our pilot study next year. We're anticipating a Q3 2026 launch of that pilot study. We'll be working with those 9 states that I mentioned, our pilot states, to test the data collection, to test the systems, make sure everything is coming in as it needs to, make modifications, and then roll out full study data collection after that for 2 years. And I know this slide here says after 2 years of full data collection, we're going to begin analysis. That will feed into our final reports and database, but we do plan to release interim reports, build some databases, data visualizations on our website to show what is coming in. We anticipate it'll take about 6 months to get enough data in order to start doing that preliminary trend analysis. But our goal is to make the data public if we can. And so I really want to leave this presentation with a note on this slide here. The quality data drives effective countermeasures. You know, high quality data is at the core of what we do at FMCSA. It's the core of what we are building the crash causal factors program and the heavy duty truck study to do. But we cannot do. As you've heard this morning from the other speakers, it really is collaboration, it's partnerships, it's leveraging all of the great work that's being done at the state and local agencies. And we really look forward to continuing working with everybody to make this study a success. And I know we talked a little bit about CPSI, but just know that that data protection is a top priority for us. If anybody in the room has any questions on CPSI, any questions on the heavy duty truck study, I'm happy to talk further, or you can always email us at ccfp@dot.gov. And then finally, we have some resources here. We have a website, fairly easy to remember at fmcsa.dot.gov/ccfp, where we were providing very frequent updates of where we're at the study, what is coming next. And as I said, any questions, I will be around all week. And if anything else comes up, please do email us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. So over the last 2 summits, we've always had an industry partner speak. And at our first summit, we had J.B. Hunt Transportation. Our second summit, we had Walmart Transportation. And with an interest in AI and information and data, we invited Google Public Sector to speak today. I'd like to introduce Jason Nichols, who is engineering lead at Google, steering digital modernization engagements with government and greenfield clients, shaping technical strategy, development, and implementation of future-proof solutions. He builds relationships with executive-level stakeholders, navigating complex sales cycles to put high-value contracts for machine learning, generative AI, and multi-cloud projects. He also contributes his technical expertise for AI initiatives, training engineers on applications of generative AI coding tools, and leading prototype development for new solutions. Jason, welcome.
So, I wasn't expecting that intro. I'm just basically going to introduce myself as the transportation architect in the public sector. But let's start off. So, thanks for having me. I recognize that I have the doubly daunting task of talking about a lot of tech right before lunch. Just kind of look me across if I'm talking too long. So what do I actually do at Google? So I have the challenge of looking at things in federal and things in state and local as it pertains to transportation, and try to bubble things up from the state and local so we're not as siloed. And also try to push things down from the DOT locals back into state and local. So what are we going to cover? And my thing's not necessarily moving along. So I recognize that most of you haven't really heard of us. So I thought I'd start with a brief introduction, and then show you some transportation use cases, and finally show you some demos. I, along with my partner Tina over there, will be around for the next day or so, and would love to hear from you. So I'm sure some of you are wondering, like, what is a company known for Gmail and YouTube doing at a transportation conference? So as it turns out, we are heavily invested in transportation. So at a high level, we were really covering these 5 separate areas. So, Google Maps and Waze. So kind of looking at transportation using AI to everything from kind of control of passenger, routing, to weather forecasting from our DeepMind AI to Google Research, and how can we look at issues that impact the entire U.S. in terms of can we simulate traffic flow? Can we simulate shutting down particular segments of roads and what's going to happen to it? And then, for things that maybe you haven't heard of, like Wing, which is our autonomous drone, or Waymo, which is our autonomous vehicle. So if we look at kind of what is Google getting into and what have we seen from the public sector, it really falls into these 4 top use cases. So from safety, can we leverage AI to create better outcomes? How can we predict and prevent crashes? Resiliencies, can we use our models to help local governments for weather and emergency planning? Operations, can we provide a single pane of glass to give all the operators all the data they need to respond quickly and efficiently, and hopefully to efficiently prevent problems before they occur? And planning, can we use our tools to accelerate long-tail operations like contracts and grants? And can we use those tools to modernize organizations? So let's dive into safety. We're going to focus on 4 areas. We're going to focus on hard braking, work zone safety, overnight vehicle detection, and flood detection. And I should probably stop a little bit, or interject a little bit. Like, all these are coming from pilots that we've done or work that we've done with all state and local governments. So traditional safety analysis was reactive, and I think this was brought up a little bit earlier. FARS, KDOT crash data, I've used Virginia, basically a Virginia native crash data, et cetera. They all have the same problem. They present a picture after an event, and they're lagging indicators. Accident prevention starts with more leading indicators. In this case, we'll talk about hard braking events. So what we've determined, and this is again coming out of Google Research, is that 10 years of looking at Google Maps data coming out of Android Auto, things of that nature, is that we can see that hard braking events are usually indicators for near misses. And for us, a hard braking event is anything with like a deceleration of 0.5 Gs. And from that data, we can usually point to other things that were going on. So we can say, in this particular area, there was a hard braking event, and we can say, is it because of issues with the road? Is it issues with the traffic? So we're using that data to kind of identify where the problems are in order to start kind of getting to that leading indicator so we can take action against them. So the full picture is that one reported crash is usually more than 20 times of those near misses. And we're using that, we're starting to make it available to the public, in this case, organizations, so they're going to be able to access it. And I think we're going to talk a lot more about this when we get to TRB, but it's something that we're actually offering out to the, customer, the federal, local government. All right, so let's talk about work zone safety. So really what we figured out is that traditional methods, safety cones, flashing signs, et cetera, don't really work. And there's rising deaths, and it's costing a lot more year over year. So we partnered with, in this particular case, I believe it's Clear Object, to really address the unique challenges of work zones. So we kind of look at a lot of different issues with it. Limited connectivity, integration with hardware-based software like LoRa, and the ability to kind of adjust those work zones on the fly to really expand or contract based upon what's going on. And then perhaps even more importantly, can we connect the data feeds that are coming out of these work zones into analytics and AI in order to improve the outcomes, to kind of improve that crash detection? And so, and I apologize for going through so many things. It's like the daunting task of covering what is like hours upon hours of multiple videos and condensing it into like 20-minute segment. So long story short, happy to talk about any of this after the fact. All right, so let's talk about bridge strikes. And so I really got involved in Google transportation. I didn't really recognize it for the problem that it is. And literally just 2 days ago, we had in DC a major snowstorm is like an inch and a half. So we had an inch and a half of snow, and the bridge, like literally right next to my house, was hit by a cloud. They forgot to close the bed of the truck, and it just crashed into a bridge. So this costs millions of taxpayers, or costs millions of dollars per year, is an issue. And like the existing safety measures they have, kind of similar to work zone safety, don't really work. Lasers, the indicators. So again, partnering with Clear Object, we developed a solution. I believe this is running in New York right now, where we use existing traffic cameras. We apply some vision AI to it. And it's not based on lasers or another piece of hardware. It's really utilizing the camera feeds that most states and local governments have already in order to get actionable alerts quickly out of it. So these systems not only detect like overhanging trucks, we can also look at like other things that are going. Can we detect crashes, traffic flow issues, things of that nature. We can also, in this particular example, look at the size of this truck, from a height and a length perspective. The final area that we're going to cover is flood detection. Again, like a lot of these are coming out of cameras. There's a common theme here. So we worked with New York City 511 camera system to identify and allow for remediation of floods. Again, similar to the example that we used before for truck detection, we can actually dive into more than just flood. We can dive into like what's going on in like traffic control. Is there something wrong? If there's something wrong with traffic, we can get traffic, more of the traffic anomalies out of it. But all this is based upon camera feeds and applying multiple different models against those camera feeds. Of course, once it's pushed up to the cloud, we can do alerts, we can talk to operation centers, we can allow that single pane of glass that I talked about at the beginning of this. So some other areas that we're kind of investigating and exploring. One of the things that Tina and I have worked on is railway crossings monitoring and alerting. We've been working with FRA and Train Info to see if we can apply things like ways to be able to detect like when cars are stopped and how to get all that information to kind of an area that's really hard, especially for rural areas where we might not necessarily have that sensor data in place. So let's dive into safety, resiliency, and planning. All right, so starting in, I want to say 2025, or not 2025, I want to say like September, like a couple months ago, Google released Roads Management Insights RMI. So this is really our de-identified and anonymized data, which we are providing, and providing is our way of saying that organizations, state and local governments, DOT can purchase the ability to use it. But it's giving the insight for traffic segments within an area. So, the examples that we have, like I think we're using Rome, there's Boston, but basically the state and locals can go and sign up for RMI and then define a segment. And from that segment, we're able to identify things like the speed, the average time for that given segment, those heartbreaking events that we were talking about earlier. We can start tracking those heartbreaking events. So it's enabling end consumers to be able to make informed decisions about what's going on their streets. So contrast this with kind of existing solutions where we're using sensor data, where you actually have to place hardware out. What we're getting at with this is really near real-time indicators of what is happening in a given area. So I think the lag time is about 2 minutes on it. And then we're feeding it, and we'll show a demo a little bit later, to do simulations on it, to say, kind of what if scenarios, and we'll talk about that some more. So here's some examples of how it works or what it looks like. So the first major use case for us was planning investment. So RMI data allows you to look and analyze historical traffic patterns to understand kind of your baseline. What are recurring trends? And what are the true peak hours for a given segment? Second, we can identify problem areas. So we can automatically isolate your recurring congestion hotspots and most inefficient corridors in order to target improvements cost effectively. And then third, we can predict. We can use this data to build models. So we come back to kind of traditional artificial intelligence that can forecast traffic conditions. And again, we can anticipate future bottlenecks. So it's really about data-defined or data-driven decision-making based upon real-world events or real-world traffic data that's coming from. So this particular one is the data analytics view of it. So in this case, we're looking at Boston. So we're kind of going into that analyze and identify step that we discussed before. And what we're seeing is that we're pinpointing the worst performing road segment. So road segment would be, and I don't know the roads in Kansas, but for the DC area, for me, it would be like 66. It's a huge corridor that runs from Washington, DC, all the way out to Front Royal. So huge segment, our huge road. So segment is really up to the end customer to define. And so for us, we probably would define like individual segments for really small sections of 66 versus 66 as in and of itself is not going to be a segment. We're interested in the piece that goes between like Washington, DC and like the first bridge within the city. So we can see really down to a very detailed level what's going on with that particular traffic. So the idea being that city planners can instantly identify most inefficient corridors to guide targeted and cost effective. All right, and then this is our real-time monitoring use case. So this one is looking at a live view, specifically of Paris, and we're getting immediate situational awareness of live traffic flow and congestion. But more importantly, looking at the panel on the right, there's an identify step. So we are doing predictive analysis of the live data against historical norms. So what we'll really be able to do is say, given our past performance of this area, we can say this is either performing worse or better than expected, and why is that? Can we get to a reason of why this is happening? So it's not just a red line on the map like Google Maps would show for traffic. it's really a prioritized and actionable alert. An operator can instantly see that the route is experiencing a significant spike in congestion, and this empowers that next step. So I would say that this particular demo, and I think for the most part, it's really limited to Paris and Tokyo. I checked it out earlier this morning. Is available live for you to play around with and kind of click through the buttons. And I'm happy to share that URL later. All right. And then the final step would be route reliability analysis, which is really, our understanding that planners don't really care about all roads. They care very, very deeply about their specific corridors. So an airport route or airport corridor, like you don't want it to be congested. So our ability to do this precise route selection, and in this particular case, we're doing New York, and it's analyzing the predefined key airport corridors. So again, we're looking at historical performance, only those selected routes, and we can do like a time of day chart to pinpoint when congestion occurs. All right. So the next piece of Google kind of Maps technology, because it all falls under Google Maps, is really this Imagery Insights Pro. So I hope some of you have seen Google Street View. It's the ability to really look at what's going on within kind of a street, and like as I'm walking down the street, or in this particular case, the car that's in the Street View has gone down. So what we've done is we started to identify common, and I believe it's up to 23 different types of assets within Google Street View. So in this particular case, we're doing like automated sign detection, we're doing infrastructure, we're doing contextual analysis for Street View. And this can be used in conjunction with LiDAR feeds or by itself. And what we're then able to do is kind of overlay it on Google Earth. You can see a full kind of digital twin representation of your assets within the city. All right. All right, there we go. So I just added in a few other things that we're working on. So violation enforcement, this is using vision AI, predictive maintenance and rail inspection. And we've talked about kind of the roadway assets and traffic. All right. I don't know why my clicker doesn't seem to go. There we go. All right, so I thought I'd throw this one in. I recognize that it's not necessarily something that we might cover from a commercial vehicle, but I thought it was pretty cool. It's kind of showing the art of the possible for an actual pilot that we've done for New York City MTA. So this one in particular used Google Pixel phones, and we attached them to the subways. And over the course of 3 months, it was actually listening to the sound that the rails make. And apparently it sounds different when there's track issues involved. So they were able to develop a predictive model that said, based upon what I'm hearing on these tracks, we can pinpoint, I think they got up to about 92% accuracy that there was a defect in that track. So it just shows like Google working with state and local governments in order to come up with kind of newer leveraging kind of our AI models in order to create great impact for the public. So planning solutions. All right, so this is not really limited to transportation use cases, although we are a transportation summit. So again, I've been at Google for 7 years right now, and we've, some of our early examples, we're doing, video translation for California, or not California, but for Colorado. But we worked with Departments of Labor, Departments of Motor Vehicles, really leveraging Google Cloud to do things from grants analysis to automatic translation of documents, to helping build systems which, enable case workers to adjudicate workloads. I believe there's a conversation on grants tomorrow. So this kind of fits in with it. And, this is really diving a little bit deeper into some of the Google tech. You know, we talked about translation. We talked about CTA and kind of doing multilingual chatbots. I think everybody's seen their Philip chatbots at this point. They've gotten much better in the last couple of years. We talked about crash data and building a dashboard, predictive analytics, and dynamic routing. We'll do a little bit of demo. I believe again at TRB, we're going to be talking about mobility AI coming out of Google. And this is taking that roadway management insights and really going kind of the next level. So can we start doing simulations of things like, if I shut down this particular segment, what's going to happen to the surrounding area? We use it for, and then traffic planning. So, you know, if we have a corridor that's normally busy based upon like a sports event, what happens to that corridor? What happens? Can we start routing the traffic around that corridor? What does that surrounding area? What is the impact of that area when we do those things? And then, you know, wayfinding. So we talked a little bit about the World Cup earlier, but this is kind of going into, can we enable or use our technology in order to speed, you know, outcome or speed, traffic, navigation, et cetera, for people. So we covered these two things. All right, so here are just a very small subset of our transportation partners have done. We talked about a lot of them. New York City, and the Vision AI solution that we use for both. So I'm going to kind of jump into demonstrations. Show up nicely here. So we're covering a couple of demos. A lot of them are roadway management insights, and then we'll kind of talk about the last bit. So these are 30 seconds of getting out of, like, I think this was a larger 5-minute video that's out on YouTube. Again, happy to share these. Just reach out. So basically, this one is really about traffic safety. So it's really just one of the examples of what we can measure with RMI and kind of the simulation data that's coming out of it. So really the idea is that we can measure it, but we really want to be able to simulate what's going to happen when we do a certain thing. So what you're watching is like years of Google research, which is our kind of transportation research, and we have other ones for health. A lot of research and a lot of internal pilots to build this simulation API. So it's creating a digital twin of the individual cities to be able to kind of say, when we shut down or do certain things to segments, what's going to happen to it. So after years of refinement, and we're ready to start getting these out to trusted testers, we're getting to it, like we're at the end of 2025, so it's going out to trusted testers, and then I believe we're going to talk about a lot more at TRD. So, you know, we talked about like what happens when we do lane closures. So traffic safety, super important for this conference, but, you know, we want to also be able to test solutions of like what happens when we close down a lane. I believe this one is Boston. I can't see. Nope, that doesn't help at all. You're basically, again, watching years of research, internal projects, pilots. So with the simulation, we're able to like individually click on those segments, and then we can, using the data that we collected over multiple years, we can really predict what's going to happen when we do these lane closures. And lane closures can be certainly, you know, something that is pre-planned by government. So, you know, we know that we are, you know, these things happen due to like roadway work or, you know, something else. Like what I didn't know was that in the US, you have to be 21 to 24 in order to rent a car, but you only have to be 18 to rent a U-Haul truck. I believe that cost Boston a couple years ago, where an 18-year-old crashed their truck into a bridge. So I think no Google conference or no conference presentation from Google would be complete without talking about generative AI. And I recognize that it seems like a like buzzword these days. So I'm trying to show like what we can actually do with generative AI as it pertains to and crash data. So just know that everything that Google does, everything that we put out to the public, and that's going to be things like Gmail, YouTube, Google Workspace, Maps, Translate. We've done AI for a long time. We're starting to inject large language models in order to kind of come up with better outcomes to, it's really, I think what we've seen is achieving more with less. And we do that externally for our internal facing products, and we also do it internally for helping our developers develop things faster. So this particular demo, Eric was nice enough to send over Kansas crash data. So, I believe I've done this with Virginia.crash data. So this was really I don't really see my my slide here, like doing its thing. So I apologize for that. But really, of course, now I'm showing my slide. So what I did was I took the Kansas crash data, and over, I want to say 45 minutes, I used generative AI and an open or public-facing product called Anti-Gravity to build out this solution. And what's nice about it is it doesn't necessarily need any coding ability. It was literally taking the CSV files, which is like a text format that are coming out of like a database now, and saying, given these files, what can you do? And like using real world language, this is probably what I said, what is a good demo of this data? So it went and created this demo for me over 45 minutes. I didn't use any of my coding skills. It was just me interacting with this large language model, this generative AI, to build this demo that you see up there. So this is what I can do as somebody that doesn't really understand the domain behind it. I mean, I understand a little bit, but what I love to do is kind of work with people that understand the domain, understand kind of like what are you really interested in seeing? Like I can show you this. I can say this is data from 2024, and this shows fatalities. It shows like what if the crash was weather related, and then it also can show like in a given period of time based on all the data, what is the most dangerous day for driving in Kansas? Apparently it's Wednesday. I don't know why, but that's what the data is showing. It's showing that it's Wednesday. The next one is looking at traffic flow, and I believe this one was taken out of truck data. Again, from the same data set. I think this one I spent maybe 10 minutes on. And I also narrated how to actually get to it. So that's about a 6-minute narration, definitely far more than what we want to get to today. Again, but if you want the URL, it's sitting out on YouTube. I'm happy to share it. So the last 3 or 4 demos is something I did about 3 weeks ago. I was really presenting like this holistic view of, can we look at policy? Can we look at entire single pane of glass dashboard? And can we look at like what a digital twin would present us if we were using LiDAR scans to kind of look at real world things that we're interested in? So the idea was that we want to be able to track all AV assets within the US. So can we start with that? This one is a little bit out of order. It's basically saying that if we can say that we can leverage our AV assets to provide LiDAR-based detection of things on the road, can we get rid of the human in the loop in order to impact policy quicker? So this one was using like things like Tesla. Again, it's it's something that we're able to solution off of the weekend. We don't necessarily have the real feeds in there. But if a Tesla or if another AV or if a bus with LiDAR detects a pothole, can we correlate that and create a work zone data exchange to automatically fire that up for policy and for public, for the government to interact with? And that's what this demo is showing. Rural intersections, I have this in there. This was another really super quick demo that's built upon this idea of like, if we wanted to figure out what are the highest our highest or most dangerous rural intersections within a given state, how would we go about doing it? And this uses like a custom built model. Again, kind of built over a weekend to say like, these are very dangerous intersections. What is the likelihood of fatality on that intersection? We come back to kind of our earlier thing talking about horrific events where this is all lagging indicators. And, you know, but from this and being able to kind of visualize this data, can we then take it and start to apply like 1123 interventions in order to help get to better outcomes? And then digital twins, we talked a little bit about. So this is using, like, there's a lot of pieces of Google Maps. So this is what we call like the tile within Google Maps. So this one is really looking at like, we used our LiDAR, we've used our autonomous vehicles in order to identify issues within kind of an area. This one is showing like, or simulating like a LiDAR detection of a stress issue or stress fracture within a bridge. So really kind of getting to kind of that next level, we have all this data out there, can we do something with it? And finally, I don't know that we necessarily need to show this one. This is a larger demo. This one is that presenting that very big, broad overview of like, can we see what's going on within the United States? So this one presents multiple different AV fleets. I believe I picked states that were part of that zone data exchange registry. So it's enabling kind of a critical infrastructure look across the entire US. It's overlaying that work zone data exchange directly on that map. So you can click into it and that's actually live data. And then it's also applying kind of weather. So we can overlay weather and how that's going to impact the areas themselves. And then finally, I thought it would be interesting to talk about research. This particular demo is, we use a technology called Notebook LM. And this one is available for public. It's also built into Google Workspaces, which Department of Transportation recently brought in. But the idea is that we can take a whole bunch of disparate data, load it into our Notebook LM, and then start asking real natural language questions of this data. And I've done a different example using kind of the, we talked about it, the safety pamphlet and talking about that and kind of interventions. This one is like, again, taking the data from Kansas State, and it's really saying, you know, we're talking about like the fatalities, it does mind mapping. It's doing all this automatically. It's nothing that you actually have to go create your own. It's just coming through it. And the final thing, which I think, you know, is interesting from, you know, covering a lot of data, it will actually do a podcast for you. So, and it's at the end of this, you know, I'm happy to show to let everybody look at it. But the idea is that we're looking at different ways of consuming what is traditionally hard to consume data, and how can we use it? How can we leverage, like in this particular case, a lot of CSV data? Can we create our own visualizations? Can we create our own analytics off of it? Can we create our own table forms? And you know, this is doing like
Today, we're going to tackle something that's pretty chaotic and stressful, right? A car crash. But we're going to peel back the layers and uncover this hidden world of data that's right underneath the surface.
So this, again, built into Notebook LM, it creates like a visual presentation for you. And then the last one is your podcast format.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is always the same. We take a massive, often chaotic stack of primary source material and we pull out the absolute most important nuggets of knowledge.
And today we are peeling back the curtain on the, let's say, the bureaucratic backbone. Every single contract before you. A collection of official motor vehicle crash coding manuals, data dictionary, and the actual form that police officers use out on the street.
Yeah, and this isn't just about.
Oh, hey there, can we help? Hey, when does a fatal crash report?
Oh, that is a critical question.
Absolutely critical, and the manual is extremely strict about that time.
Okay, let's unpack. A fatal crash report, which is any crash that involves a death within 30 days, is considered.
All right, so basically what that's showing is that not only does it create the podcast for you to consume, it also gives you the ability to interact with this podcast. And I believe like one of the examples that we had recently, we're talking to the Department of Transportation. We brought in Workspace. One of the people that's running kind of the pilot program there has written, I think, it's 6 or 7 articles. And so in the middle of his work, his playing around with Notebook LM, he said, it's, hi, my name is Chris, and, and they're like, oh, hi, Chris, we loved your articles. So it actually has some context of what's going on. All right, so, Google is doing a lot of stuff within the public sector, doing things within state and locals. We're doing things at the federal level. Research is looking at transportation broadly and how can we impact transportation. That's, we didn't necessarily talk about everything that they're doing. Google DeepMind is looking at weather and getting to like, how does climate impact areas? How does it impact flooding? And all of these individual like subsections of Google are all feeding into like all of our projects that we're doing. Everything lives on Google Cloud, which is the organization that Tina and I work for. So we can use all the individual pieces. We can use Waymo and kind of the insights that they're getting. We can use the research, we can use DeepMind, but everything lives inside the Google Cloud. That's how we're working. I love hearing about problems, and with about 15 to 30 minutes, we can usually see some insights out of your data. And I'll be here for until tomorrow afternoon. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, that concludes our plenary session. I do have some instructions for everyone. If you were with FMCSA, there is an all hands meeting in that room right there. The lunch buffet is in the room, so don't go to this buffet out here. Everyone else, buffet's out here. You'll have lunch in here, and then at 1 o'clock, we're going to start up the concurrent sessions. Just so you know that there are 3 rooms operating. So we got a workshop area. We got this room, and the other room. So look at the agenda, find out which one you want to go to, and enjoy the rest of the day. Also, we have a reception at the Kaufman Center at 4 p.m., which is basically right across the street from the hotel. One thing to note, if you do have a sidearm, you got to check that in, or please don't bring it. It's a policy they have, and you'll go through a detector. So just want to give you a heads up there. So we'll see you at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Tech companies that want to carry this. So exemptions and I looked at the agenda and all my sessions are in this room. So if you want to get up and bring a different